From the very start, Kanye West didn't just want to enter the music industry, he wanted to bend it. And that's where the controversy begins. Long before the biggest scandals, there was a tone, absolute confidence delivered without apology. In an industry that rewards humility until you've earned it, Kanye arrived declaring his greatness before the gatekeepers agreed. To some, it was refreshing. To others, it was unforgivable. Early interviews set the pattern. Kanye spoke like someone who knew the ending of his story, while everyone else was still reading Chapter 1. He challenged labels, criticized trends, and dismissed limitations placed on him as a producer-turned-rapper. The pushback was immediate. Executives questioned his role. Peers questioned his attitude. Media framed him as difficult, arrogant, or delusional. But the attention stuck, because controversy, even at low volume, travels faster than polite talent. What's crucial here is that the backlash didn't slow him down. It hardened him. Each dismissal fed the narrative he would later weaponize. They don't believe in me, so I'll prove them wrong publicly. That mindset turns every success into validation and every criticism into fuel. It also sets up a dangerous feedback loop, one where being right matters more than being understood. As his early work began to land, the contrast became sharper. The music earned praise, but the persona kept provoking debate. People didn't just talk about the songs, they talked about him. And that's the seed of a career-long pattern. Kanye never separated art from identity. When you criticized one, you were attacking the other. When you applauded one, it justified everything else. By the end of this origin phase, the blueprint was clear. Kanye's career would not be a smooth climb. It would be a series of collisions between confidence and consensus, expression and expectation. The controversy wasn't an accident that came later. It was present at the foundation, quietly teaching the audience how to watch him, not just as an artist, but as a headline in motion. And once the stages got bigger, that tension didn't disappear. It exploded. Live, on camera, with nowhere to cut away. There's a point in Kanye West's timeline where the controversy stops being background noise and becomes a televised event, something the whole culture watches at the same time. Award shows are built to celebrate control, scripted speeches, polished applause, predictable winners. Kanye treated them like pressure chambers. And once he realized a live stage could hijack the entire news cycle in seconds, those stages became his most dangerous weapon. The pattern was simple. A moment of celebration would turn into a moment of disruption, and the world would split instantly. Some saw honesty, some saw entitlement, some saw performance art, others saw disrespect. The important thing is that the argument itself became the product. Because award show controversies don't just trend, they replay. They get clipped, memed, debated, and relitigated for years. Kanye didn't need to release new music to stay present. He only needed to create a moment that culture couldn't stop discussing. What makes these incidents so powerful in his story is that they changed how people interpreted everything afterward. Once you're labeled unpredictable, every appearance carries suspense. Every pause feels loaded. Every facial expression becomes foreshadowing. You're no longer attending events. You're turning up as a risk factor. And risk is addictive to audiences, even when they claim to hate it. These public stunts also cemented a key contradiction. Kanye demanded artistic respect, but he often pursued it through behavior that alienated people. In his mind, disruption could be framed as truth-telling, a refusal to play nice in a system he believed was fake. But to the public, the same disruption often read as ego, attention-seeking, or cruelty toward other artists. The clash between intention and impact is where the controversy thrives, because both sides can prove their point depending on which clip they replay. And once that door opened, it never fully closed. A single live incident can become a lifelong reference point. It becomes shorthand. He's that guy. It follows you into interviews, into collaborations, into business deals. Even when you're quiet, the expectation of chaos stays attached. By the end of this chapter, Kanye's fame has evolved into something heavier than celebrity. He becomes a cultural event, someone who can hijack the room, the timeline, the headlines. And that sets up the next phase perfectly, because if you can seize attention publicly, you can also weaponize it privately through feuds, call-outs, and conflicts that refuse to stay behind closed doors. After the award show era proved one thing, that Kanye could dominate the conversation in seconds, the next evolution was predictable. The controversies stopped needing a stage. The stage became the internet, and Kanye's feuds didn't behave like normal celebrity disagreements. They weren't brief spats followed by quiet PR cleanup. They were prolonged, unpredictable firestorms, public, emotional, and often designed in a way that forced everyone else to respond. This is where Kanye's reputation turns from controversial into volatile. Because feuds are not just arguments, they're power plays. When he called people out, it wasn't always a single criticism. It was a statement about hierarchy, respect, loyalty, betrayal. And since his audience was massive, a single post or quote could instantly shift public perception of the target. That's what made the feuds feel dangerous. He wasn't just talking. He was redirecting the spotlight like a weapon. The cycle often looked the same. A rumor would spread. A collaboration would sour. A comment would be interpreted as disrespect. Then comes the explosion. Posts, interviews, leaked frustrations, and a wave of reactions from fans, media, and the people involved. Sometimes the feud would cool down. Sometimes it would reignite months later from a single line. Either way, it never fully disappeared because the internet archives everything. Every feud becomes a searchable chapter. And the deeper issue is that Kanye's conflicts tended to blur professional and personal boundaries. In most industries, you keep disputes contained because the brand needs stability. Kanye did the opposite. He fused the conflict into his identity. The artist who refuses to be managed, the celebrity who rejects the script, the person who says what others only think. That image attracted supporters who viewed him as brave, but it also attracted critics who viewed him as reckless, cruel, or manipulative. The feuds also kept feeding a larger theme: control. Kanye repeatedly positioned himself as someone fighting systems, media narratives, industry politics, gatekeeping, disrespect. But the way he fought often created collateral damage. People around him became characters in his storyline, whether they wanted that role or not. And once you've turned conflict into content, the line between truth and performance gets harder to identify. By the end of Part 3, one thing becomes clear. Kanye's controversies weren't isolated events. They were a continuous environment. Fame didn't calm him down. It amplified the collisions. And as the feuds multiplied, the controversies began to shift into something even more divisive, because now it wasn't only celebrity drama. It was culture war. By the time Kanye stepped beyond music and into politics, the controversy didn't just follow him, it multiplied. Because politics doesn't work like entertainment. In entertainment, audiences can disagree and still keep watching. In politics, disagreement becomes identity. And once Kanye began aligning himself with political symbols and culture war language, his public image stopped being complicated and became polarizing in the hardest possible way. This era is where the timeline shifts from he's unpredictable to he's a real-world problem. Public support for political figures, headline-grabbing statements, and meetings that looked surreal to casual viewers turned Kanye into more than a musician. He became a walking debate, genius or reckless, truth-teller or provocateur, misunderstood or dangerously influential. The attention was massive, but the cost was permanent division. Then came the moment Kanye blurred the line even further, turning political attention into a personal campaign story. The presidential run era didn't land as a normal political move. It landed as spectacle. It pulled in supporters, critics, late-night jokes, and serious concern all at once. And in the middle of that chaos, every new quote became a headline grenade because the world wasn't just reacting to music anymore. It was reacting to a person stepping into civic space with celebrity power and unpredictable messaging. But the real turning point of polarization wasn't only the campaign. It was the later phase where Kanye's controversies moved into rhetoric that triggered broad condemnation and real consequences, platform restrictions, public backlash, and business partners cutting ties. This is where the culture war label becomes unavoidable. People weren't debating taste anymore. They were debating harm, responsibility, and what happens when a megaphone is used recklessly. And here's what makes Part 4 essential. It sets up the next domino. Once politics enters your brand becomes high risk. Companies don't just worry about PR, they worry about being associated with the controversy itself. The industry starts treating you like a liability, not an asset, because polarization spreads faster than any marketing campaign can contain. This is the chapter where Kanye's story stops being a talented artist with a loud mouth and becomes a cultural flashpoint. And once you become a flashpoint, the fallout is no longer hypothetical. It's contractual, it's financial, it's permanent. From untouchable to uninsurable. When controversy stays in the realm of opinions, brands can pretend it's manageable. They'll ride the attention, release a careful statement, and hope the news cycle moves on. But Kanye's timeline hit a point where it stopped being polarizing and started being treated as business risk, the kind that threatens partners, shareholders, and public-facing reputation in a measurable way. This is where the fallout becomes visible in contracts. Late 2022 is the clearest turning point, because one major partnership after another began snapping. The biggest shockwave came when Adidas ended its partnership with Ye and stopped producing Yeezy products, citing his recent comments as unacceptable. That was more than a PR split. It was a financial and cultural breakup, because Yeezy had become a global commercial machine. At nearly the same time, other fashion relationships distanced themselves. Balenciaga's parent company, Kering, said the label no longer had a relationship or future plans with Ye, another clear signal that the industry was moving from complicated to no. Then there's the quieter fallout that still matters: platform access. In October 2022, Kanye's Instagram and Twitter accounts were locked, restricted, following anti-Semitic posts, showing that even the places where he controlled the narrative were no longer guaranteed. And the point of listing these is not to stack scandals. It's to show the mechanism of collapse. Once major partners cut ties, everything downstream changes. The celebrity stops being a bold personality and becomes a liability calculation. Talent is no longer the main question. The question becomes, will this association harm us? Will it trigger backlash? Will it force us into constant crisis management? When the answer is maybe, brands don't wait for certainty, they exit. This is why Part 5 is the most concrete chapter in the entire timeline. Controversies can be debated. Contracts are decisions. They're proof that the industry's tolerance has limits, and that those limits are often enforced only when the cost becomes too high to ignore. And here's the twist that makes the story feel unfinished. Even after the deals collapse, Kanye remains famous. The spotlight doesn't disappear, it just changes shape. From celebration to surveillance. And that leads into the final part, where the question isn't what happened, but what now, and whether redemption is possible when the internet keeps the receipts forever. Here's the uncomfortable ending to Kanye West's controversy timeline. It doesn't resolve neatly. Even after the deal collapses, the platform restrictions, and the wave of public backlash, Kanye doesn't become forgotten. He becomes permanently watchable, the kind of celebrity whose next move is treated like breaking news before it even happens. That's the strange power of controversy as a career-long engine. It creates a second audience, not just fans of the music, but spectators of the chaos. And once that spectator audience exists, the spotlight never truly turns off. It simply shifts from celebration to surveillance. People watching to see whether the next chapter is redemption, relapse, reinvention, or another firestorm. In recent developments, Kanye West has also shown signs of trying to reshape the narrative, most notably with a public apology message placed as a full-page ad where he apologized for anti-Semitic behavior and denied being a Nazi. That doesn't automatically erase the past, but it does underline the core theme of this entire story. Kanye's public life is rarely about a single event. It's about cycles, provocation, backlash, consequence, response, and then a new cycle. So loop back to part 1, the origin, where controversy was baked into the persona from the start. This timeline isn't just scandals happened, it's that Kanye repeatedly tested the boundaries of what fame can excuse, and the world kept arguing about where the line should be. When that line finally triggered contractual fallout, like Adidas ending the partnership, controversy stopped being abstract and became measurable. And the closing question is the one that keeps viewers stuck until the last second. Is this a story of a genius who can't stop detonating his own legacy? Or a public figure who will always find a way back into the headlines, no matter the cost?